Greetings, humans of the internet, and welcome once again to Bowtie Talks. I, of course, am your excellent host, Luke Johnson, coming to you, as usual, from my undisclosed location in Midwest USA, with some more historic insights. And now that we've covered three fraternal organizations that are very well known, I figured it would be a good time to discuss the history of some lesser-known American fraternal organizations, particularly those that were founded by the Catholic Church, or members of the Catholic Church, I should say, because as a member of the Church, I figure it my sworn duty to share some history with the masses. So please join me as I discuss the history of some Catholic fraternal organizations. Now, I'm sure as many of you know, Catholics are not allowed to join the Freemasons. This did not stop them, however, from forming their own societies, the most famous of which is most likely the Knights of Columbus. But before we can discuss the history of the Knights of Columbus itself, or themselves I should say, I figured it would be a good time to discuss the life of its founder, the Blessed Father Michael J. McGivney. And to anyone wondering, no, blessed does not mean the same thing as saint. Anyone wondering what the difference is? Well, there are actually several steps in the Church's process of declaring a person a saint. And, in order, the corresponding titles are Servant of God, Venerable, Blessed, and finally Saint. Blesseds are those who have been beatified. Beatification typically requires one confirmed miracle and allows the beatified person to be venerated by his or her local church. Canonization typically requires two attested miracles and allows veneration of the saint by the entire church. Well, anyway, that's enough of that. Back to the biography. I've chosen to discuss this, that is, the life of Blessed Father Michael J. McGivney, before we get into his organization, because quite frankly, his life shows true determination in the face of adversity. And that's a true American principle if there ever was one, and dare I say, also an Irish principle, because we are a very resilient people, to be sure. Michael Joseph McGivney was born on August 12, 1852, in Waterbury, Connecticut, the first child born to Patrick and Mary McGivney. His parents were forced out of Ireland like so many other Irish immigrants by the Great Potato Famine. And I discussed this in the very first episode of Bowtie Talks. And if you'd like to learn more about that, then go back in the archives, so to speak, and listen to the first episode of Bowtie Talks, and then come back here. As one could imagine, the life of an Irish-American family during this time was anything but easy. To provide for his family, Patrick McGivney worked as a molder in the heat and noxious fumes of a local brass mill. And Mary McGivney gave birth to 13 children, only 7 of whom would live to see adulthood. He attended the public schools of Waterbury's working-class neighborhoods and was said to be a good student. And he was noted for, and I quote, excellent deportment and proficiency in his studies. And at the age of 13, shortly after the Civil War, he graduated early and began work in the spoon-making department of the same brass factory at which his father worked to provide a few more dollars for his family. He left that job 3 years later at 16 and entered college planning to become a priest. He attended various seminaries in New York, Canada, and Baltimore, Maryland. He was ordained a priest on December 22, 1877. Now, as I discussed before on the history of Irish immigrants in this country during my first episode, to be a Catholic in the United States during this time was tough, to say the least. And when Catholic immigrants began coming to America, American Protestants started fearing these immigrants, particularly the Irish Catholics in the Mid-Atlantic and New England states, were a threat to the established society. You can't make this up, folks. I wish I could make this up. And as immigration increased, naturally, so too did the number of American Catholics. However, as I talked about in the first ever episode of Bowtie Talks, they were basically banned from American society. And naturally, they were wanting support groups and fraternal organizations to be around like-minded people and to give protection to the members. However, not very many fraternal organizations admitted Catholics. Father McGivney recognized this and sought out to create an alternative and a way to strengthen religious faith and also provide for the financial needs of family facing illness or death of the primary breadwinner. And this also is interesting because during this time, very few, if any, life insurance companies would insure the lives of Catholics. And with this in mind, Father McGivney spoke to his bishop and met with men of his parish to discuss forming a fraternal benefit society. To gain more inspiration, Father McGivney traveled to Boston to examine the Massachusetts Catholic Order of Foresters and then to Brooklyn to learn about the recently established Catholic Benevolent League, and both of these organizations offered insurance benefits. However, he found the Catholic Benevolent League to be lacking the excitement he thought was needed if his organization were to compete with the secret societies of the day, and he expressed an interest in establishing a New Haven court of foresters, but the charter of Massachusetts foresters prevented them from operating outside their commonwealth. And so Father McGivney created his own organization. He originally wanted to call it the Sons of Columbus, but many of the founding members were Civil War veterans, and the idea of the knighthood was very attractive to them. They felt it would help to apply a noble ritual in support of the emerging cause of Catholic civil liberty. Now, for the Columbus part, that's actually quite a story in and of its own. Yes, the organization was named after one of the more controversial figures in American history, Christopher Columbus, and it was intended as a mild rebuke to the Anglo-Saxon Protestant leaders of America who upheld the explorer, who was a Catholic Italian working for Catholic Spain, as an American hero, but also sought to marginalize the recent Catholic immigrants. And in taking Columbus as their patron, they were sending the message that not only could Catholics be full members of American society, but were in fact instrumental in its foundation. The first members would also say they chose Columbus because they felt they were, and I quote, entitled to all rights and privileges due to such a discovery by one of our faith. And the first lodge was named San Salvador Council No. 1 and was established on May the 15th, 1882, being named for the first island on which Christopher Columbus landed. And so the organization was started and has been growing ever since. In a letter to the priests of his diocese, Father McGivney claimed that his goal in founding the Knights of Columbus was to, and I quote, prevent people from entering secret societies by offering the same, if not better, advantages to our members. And his second purpose was to unite the men of our faith through the Diocese of Hartford, that we may thereby gain strength to aid each other in the time of sickness, and to render pecuniary assistance to the families of deceased members. Because you have to remember, this was a time when most insurance companies would not insure the lives of Catholics. The original insurance system devised by Father McGivney gave a deceased knight's widow a $1,000 death benefit, and each member was assessed $1 upon death, and when the number of knights grew beyond 1,000, the assessment decreased according to the rate of the increase. And the Knights of Columbus still provide for the widows and orphans of its members. And as would be suspected, however, there were naysayers in the country. Many considered the Knights of Columbus only a Catholic form of Freemasonry, and Father McGivney was mocked by critics who distrusted his motives. Many of the original members quickly became disillusioned and thought about disbanding entirely and joining another fraternal organization. But one member told his fellows that if we are going down, let it be with honor, and I said was no necessity for any such action, but if we kept our courage, worked shoulder to shoulder, success would crown our efforts. And their unity was important. They were instilled with pride and restored order, and they all voted to stick together. A few months after, they received a note from another town in Connecticut asking for information on how to establish a council. And so a new council was formed on the mission of the Knights of Columbus, which is charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism, and more councils quickly followed. However, Father McGivney would not live to see his organization grow very much, as he would die just 8 years after founding the Knights of Columbus on August the 14th, 1890, just 2 days after his 38th birthday. His funeral in Waterbury, Connecticut, his hometown, was the largest at the time, with more than 70 of his fellow priests and civic leaders in attendance. Delegations from almost every one of the 57 Knights of Columbus councils chartered in the first 8 years of the organization sent a delegation to his funeral. Sorry about the noise in the background. That was my phone. I just got a notification. Sorry about that. And after Father McGivney's death, some 5,000 knights from throughout the region staged a pilgrimage to Waterbury to pay tribute to Father McGivney. And today there are more than 14,000 councils around the world, and the Knights of Columbus is a multi-billion-dollar non-profit charitable organization. And Knights of Columbus may be seen distributing Tootsie Rolls to raise funds to fight developmental diseases, volunteering for the Special Olympics, and other charitable organizations. They were also the first organization to promote blood drives in 1937, which they still do. They also raise funds for disaster victims and parade at patriotic events with their bright capes, feathered hats, and ceremonial swords. And I have seen their uniforms, and I must say they are quite nice. They wear like black tuxedo-like jackets, black pants, and they always carry swords when they're in uniform. And the organization has special meaning to me as my father is a Knight of Columbus. Hi, Dad, and I hope to join someday soon. And just like there have been many Freemasons of note, there have also been many Knights of Columbus of note. These include President John F. Kennedy, Vince Lombardi, Babe Ruth, and a personal hero of mine, the most venerable Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen. And now that we have covered the Knights of Columbus, it should be noted the Knights of Columbus was not the first American Catholic fraternal organization. For that, we must go back quite a bit. For that, we must look to an organization whose origins are much older. I am referring, of course, to the ancient Order of Hibernians, which is the oldest Catholic fraternal organization in America. However, its formation dates back to around the time of the Reformation. The ancient Order of Hibernians, or AOH for short, can trace its origins back to 1565 in Ireland, when Irish Catholic men first banded together as the Defenders by Rory O'More in County Kildare in the province of Leinster, Ireland. And in 1565, the Earl of Sussex issued a proclamation establishing a penalty of death for any priest found in the province of Leinster. The head of a priest was brought a higher reward than the head of a wolf. And Rory O'More organized the Defenders to serve as sentinels, guarding both the clergy and the congregation during the celebration of the Mass and the ministering of the sacraments, and helping them to safeguard the Mass in the woods, hills, and glens. The Solgar Tharún, which is Irish Gaelic for dear priest, would celebrate Mass using a large rock for the altar, and the Defenders would also secure a place of sanctuary for the hunted priest in the caves of mountains or a small cabin of the faithful who risked all to shelter their priest. During these dark days, it was illegal for Irish Catholics to attend Mass, to practice their faith, to speak their native language, to own their own land, to hold public office, to purchase land, to receive an education, to vote, to keep arms for protection, and mandated Catholics to attend Protestant worship services, along with a host of other offensive laws imposed upon them by the English. Violations of these laws were punishable by torture, exile, imprisonment, or death. And these led to secret societies like the Defenders, the Terryolts, and the Ribbonmen. To write injustices, protect the Roman Catholic clergy, and to guard the celebration of the Mass and the illegal hedge schools which taught Gaelic, Latin, Greek, and Irish history to young Catholics eager to learn more about their faith and heritage. One of the largest of the Irish Catholic secret societies was called the Ribbonmen. They took their They took their name from their badge of recognition, which was pieces of green cloth in their coat's buttonhole. The Ribbonmen continued the Defenders' traditions by protecting the Catholic clergy and defending the downtrodden Irish Catholic people from attacks, house burnings, and murders committed by Protestant secret societies. And in the early 1820s, branches of the Ribbonmen adopted public names such as St. Patrick's Boys, St. Patrick Funeral Society, Sons of the Shamrock, or the Hibernian Funeral Society, in order to function publicly, to provide sick and death benefits to its members and their families in distress, and to operate more on the lines of quote-unquote friendly societies. The friendly societies led to the lodge system of organization, using secret ceremonials for initiating new members, secret modes of recognition among the membership, the issuance of charters to subordinate branches of the orders, a system of government and rules for the conducting of meetings and the businesses of the orders and its branches, as well as providing their members with sick and death benefits. And when they made their way to America, the Irish also began to organize mutual aid and benefit societies, especially in large cities such as Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. The Friendly Sons of St. Patrick was established in 1784 in New York and was proud to have General George Washington as a member. The Irish Catholics began to organize to counter the anti-Catholic and anti-Irish prejudice and violence in America, which I talked about again in the first episode of Bowtie Talks. And as I also talked about, the Irish were denied jobs with "No Irish Need Apply" signs at places of employment and faced harassment. And some radicals even stooped so low as church burning. St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church in New York was burned to the ground in 1831, and in 1832, 57 Irish railroad workers suffering from cholera near Malvern, Pennsylvania, were refused medical attention, died, and were dumped in an unmarked mass grave. And on August 10th, 1834, a convent in Massachusetts was burned down by an anti-Catholic mob, and throughout 1834 and 1835, anti-Catholic nativist gangs attacked Irish neighborhoods in 5 points in New York, resulting in several major street brawls which lasted for days. And this led to the need for Irish Catholic mutual benefit societies. In 1836, a group of members of the Order of Hibernians in Ireland, which to this day still refers to itself as a Friendly Society, had emigrated to America and appealed to the Board of Erin in Ireland for permission to establish a branch of the ancient Order of Hibernians in New York City. At the same time, another group of Hibernians in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania, were also seeking to formally establish a branch in their state. The two groups joined together to march in the New York St. Patrick's Day Parade in 1836. The Hibernians in New York City met in the parish house at 23 Oliver Street of the St. James Roman Catholic Church, located on St. James Place in Manhattan near the 5 Points section. This area is presently called Chinatown, but was inhabited during this period by mostly Irish immigrants. And in June of 1836, these men received a reply from the Board of Erin. The letter laid out the rules and foundations for the ancient Order of Hibernians in America. These included, first, all members must be Roman Catholics and of Irish descent and of good moral character, and none of your members shall join any secret societies contrary to the laws of the Catholic Church, and at all times and all places your motto shall be friendship, unity, and true Christian charity. You must love without dissimulation, hating evil, cleaving to good, loving to one another as brotherly love, without preventing one another. Let the love of brotherhood abide in you, and forget not hospitality to your immigrant brother that may land on your shores, and we advise you above all things, have natural charity among yourselves. And be it known that our wish and prayer is that when you form your society in many cities and towns, you will do all in your power to aid and protect your Irish sisters from all harm and temptation. As the Irish woman is known for her chastity all over the world, some may differ with you in religion, but, brothers, bear in mind that the good Lord died for us all. Therefore be it known unto you that our wish is that you do all you can for the Irish immigrant girls, no matter who they may be, and God will be good to you in your new country, and in doing this you will keep the high standing and honor of the Irish in America. We send these instructions to you, hoping that you will carry them out to the best of your ability. Be it known unto you that you are at liberty to make such laws as will guide your workings, and for the welfare of our old society. But such laws must be at all times according to the teachings of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, and the obligations that we send to you, and all your workings must be submitted to any Catholic priest when called for. We send these instructions, as we promised to do, with a young man who works on the ship and who called on you before. Send a copy to our friend who you spoke of and who is now working in Pennsylvania, hoping that the bearer and his copy with land safe, and that you will treat him right. We remain your brothers in the true bonds of friendship on this 4th day of May, A.D. 1836. And near the Church of St. James in May 1836, the first division of the ancient Order of Hibernians in America was organized by the Venerable Board of Erin. And with that, the society grew and grew and grew, and is still active today. And with that, I'm afraid I'm going to have to sign off now, folks. I hope you've enjoyed our little trek through history. And what have we learned today? Well, I think we've learned that like-minded people must stick together in times of crisis. And it's good to have people working toward a common goal. And if I've sparked your interest, anyone out there listening, any young Catholics, go out and join the Knights of Columbus, like I hope to do soon. Thank you, goodbye, and God bless.